Thank you for having me, dear Mark, dear friends. I want to invite you to close your eyes and to take a breath with me. And to do another one like this, really bringing your whole being into this next in-breath and this next out-breath, like nothing else matters. This kind of radical, immediate coming back home to our bodies, to the present moment, to the breath of life, the Nishmat Chaim. Sometimes we think it's going to take time to manage to meditate and to manage to be present, and kind of come with the idea that we have to muscle our way through it. And I wanted us to start like this today, in the most simple way, in the most immediate way. What is it like to just stop? To just stop and come back home. And I believe that one really present, aware, intentional breath sometimes is more precious than a longer sit in which we're scratching our ears and tapping our fingers and what would it be like right now to just really stop and be, and actually just let our beings enjoy being. And I know it might sound strange to hear it this way, but the being is already enjoying itself. That's actually what life does. And we often don't make space to hear it, to see it. And then we come with our problems and we add layers and layers of conditioning and ideas and problem solving, and then the idea of construction that we have to build ourselves to do something. And I wanted us to start with this this reminder that we are enough. And this is enough. And why am I suggesting this today is because this Shabbat we're going to be reading Parashat Korach. And Korach really doesn't think he has enough. And actually, as people do, he projects. And so he says to Moshe and Aaron, Rav lachem, you have too much. And Moshe at some point responds to him, Rav lachem, you've had enough. So it's saying exactly the same thing. If you read the parasha, they're saying the same words to each other, but they're meaning something very, very, very different. Korach is coming with kind of claims and, kind of in an antagonistic way of criticizing and judging and envy, basically saying, you have too much. And Moshe is replying, you have enough. Why do you want more? Why do you want to be someone else? And so much about, human wars in a much wider scale, and I don't need to be more specific, I think here, are about us humans forgetting this, Why do we need what someone else has? Or what does someone else needs what we have? And so I want to share with you, I think it's going to be the shortest excerpt ever of the parasha that I want to share with you. It's just one very small sentence. I'm going to share my screen with you. This is Moshe's reaction. Oh, by the way, you don't have to look at the screen if you want to stay in your meditation and listen contemplatively, and receive kind of this short teaching. You're very, very welcome to stay with your eyes closed and to just hear me. You will have the soul sheet. If you prefer to look at it, you can, but sometimes I almost wouldn't advise that because it brings us back into our heads. And so I was reading this again today, and I was very touched when I was reading this. Okay, Veishma Moshe, Veipol al panav. When Moshe heard the claim of Korach, the accusation of Korach, which is a perfect example of bad faith, meaning and of populism, meaning using arguments, rhetorics that are on the surface level of things very rational and legitimate almost and convincing, but because it's coming from an unhealthy place, it decontextualizes what it claims, and then it's just not relevant. It's absurd almost, Korach's claim and Korach's blame. And so I'm very touched always to see that the first reaction of Moshe is not to respond. His first reaction is somatic. And his first reaction is to fall on his face. And so we Jews used to fall on our face a lot. We used to bow down like Muslims today. And we stopped after Islam came because we wanted to distinguish ourselves socially from Muslim culture. And I have to say, it's one of the great losses for me of Jewish culture. It's something I'm still mourning because I adore falling on my face. I do that in yoga, and I used to do it when I was practicing Zen. There is something deeply relieving about this, and about putting the forehead on the floor and the pressure on the third eye, which we also have in the spherotic tree of Kabbalah. And actually, I found that in the kind of world of contemporary psychology that is called somatic psychology, when someone is very angry, it's a posture that's recommended to calm down. Okay, so he's falling on his face, and Rashi comments on this because you could wonder, who is he falling before? Is he falling before Korach to try to appease him, or to try to prevent himself from going and hitting him in the face, to kind of mitigate his anger? I'll share with you when I was married, and my ex-husband used to drive me crazy, which never happened because I'm a meditation teacher, so I never get angry. But it has happened to me to fall on my face rather than, started screaming or things like this. And it works. It works. It's a great technique. Okay, so who is he doing this before? And Rashi suggests he's doing this before God. So he's doing this before the invisible. Not doing this before Korach. He's doing this before God in order to plead for God for these crazy humans who keep misbehaving. Because to him, and this is how humble he is, Korach is not even insulting him, he's insulting God in a way. And I produced here like the very, very short, and that's the very short excerpt of the Sefer Yetzirah about the month of Tammuz. Sefer Yetzirah is one of the oldest works of Jewish mysticism. And as Mark reminded us, tonight we're moving into Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, and I love that I'm teaching today. I'm in France, and it's soon the evening here. And so this is what's said about Sefer Yetzirah. He made the letter Chet rain and bound it to a crown, and formed with it Cancer in the world, and Tammuz in the year, and the left leg in the person. The left leg, which corresponds to Hod, to humility. And then there is something else that's not written in this verse, which is that Tammuz corresponds to vision. The month of Tammuz corresponds to vision. It goes together because most of our months and holidays are also connected to nature. And so Tammuz is the first month of the summer. And in the summer, everything is in the bright light. Everything is in the light, right? So we see more clearly. Tammuz is also connected to vision on a spiritual level, on a symbolic level, on an invisible level. Vision as perspective, because in the 17th of Tammuz, we start descending into our 3 weeks of mourning before Tisha B'Av. And so it's vision as not as seeing, eyesight, but as perspective. And you know what's interesting, my dears? The Sefer Yetzirah associates the month of Tammuz with the tribe of Reuven. With each month, with each of the 12 months of the Jewish calendar is associated the name of a tribe. And the tribe of this month is Reuven. And what does Reuven mean? See, a son. Reuven is the first son of Yaakov, whom he had with Leah. And Leah, she suffered so much from not being loved that her first reaction was kind of, instead of, it wasn't so much a reaction between her and her or her and her husband. It was before people. Look, people, I've been humiliated because I wasn't loved. And see, I got a son. And if you look at the beginning, the opening of Parashat Korach, the princes that are coming before Moshe with him are from the tribe of Reuven. It's a coincidence, but I like it. Okay? They're coming from the tribe of Reuven. And there is something to me about the kind of ethos, the midah, the kind of conditioning almost of Korach, maybe, that's an interpretation I'm offering here, coming from Leah, coming from suffering, coming from feeling I'm not enough and I'm not loved enough. And so I want to be seen, and I want people to see what I get, and I want to get more than what I have. And Moshe here, his reaction is the opposite of this, and it's the antidote to this. It's I'm going to bow down and surrender to something that is not visible, to something that can be grasped through the eyes. I have nothing to prove. I am going to, defend myself because I have to, but I have nothing to prove. And when I'm saying this, I'm going to stop sharing now, but when I'm saying this with you, it's moving to me because I'm just seeing, if I had a lot of distance upon us, humanity, and if it wasn't so deadly and tragic, our wars, there is something, like it looks like kids playing power games, having to prove this and that and this and that. And so, we need to grow up, all of us humans. And it starts with each of us. This is what Hasidism and Kabbalah tell us. That the tikkun of the world depends on each of us. The healing of the world depends on each of us and working on ourselves. And Torah is there to teach us that. Torah is here to see yourselves in a mirror and to learn parasha after parasha from their mistakes and their greatness. Both. We have to learn here from Korach and from Moshe, from the counterexample and from the positive example, if you will, because they're both aspects of us. And so I want to invite us to sit, simply inviting very, very clear, honest seeing. Just seeing ourselves as we are. Not trying to get anywhere, not trying to get more, right? Just inviting clear seeing. So I want to invite you to sit comfortably. If your feet are on the floor, the legs are uncrossed and the 2 feet are flat on the floor. The legs are hip width apart. And the hands are resting just gently on the thighs. We want to feel comfortable. If you're sitting on a cushion on the floor, just make sure that your knees are either touching the floor or are being supported, and that your hips are higher than your knees so that you can have a long back, very long back, whether you're sitting up or closer to the floor. Long back, open shoulders, and if you feel some tension, again, feel free to roll up and down. And inviting again a couple of breaths. I want to invite a kind of really twofold kavana for this sit. Both very clear and honest seeing. So every thought that comes to meet us, can we meet it? Okay, not push it away, just, oh, okay, this thought, this preoccupation, this worry, this memory, this, right? Clear seeing, honest seeing, and benevolence towards ourselves. Now, if you feel like you're harsh with yourself, if you see thoughts that are harsh with yourself, you can place a hand on the heart, a hand on the belly, and just say, I am enough. I am enough. So clear seeing, an open heart, a kind heart. Again, being grounded in your body, either feeling a physical sensation of the feet meeting the floor, or sitting bones meeting the chair, or the breath moving in and out. And then simply coming back to this intention of seeing clearly and welcoming warmly. The last 2 minutes of this sit. Can I show up breath after breath, moment after moment, in full presence, like we did at the beginning, and offering myself benevolence. I am enough, Ravli. I have a lot, I have enough. Beautiful breath in and out. Thanking ourselves for our beautiful presence in this meditation. And thanking each other. Let's get ready to say Kaddish with Rabbi Mark.
So much, Rabbi Mira. Thank you so much, as always, for leading us so beautifully today. I want to encourage everyone to stay present if you're able for another few minutes to support those of us who are in mourning or observing a yard site, who are invited to put the name and names of those you're honoring today through Kaddish in the chat. You can join us if it's your custom to participate in the Kaddish for those, to recite Kaddish for those who have no one to do so. And thanks to Rachel for sharing the words on the screen. And if you are joining me, please rise in body or in spirit. You can unmute at this time. Yitgadal.
Mira,
Alma
Amen.
Heshme Rabba
Bahar, Vishraman, Vietnase, Adar, Vietale, Visalal, Shme, Vikusha, Viku, Bela, Hokacha, Vashirata, Vishkafata, Vinachamata, Miran, Viaman, Miru, Amen.
Amen.
Shlama Rabami, Shemaya, Alina, Israel, Amen.
Shalom
Shalom, Be'asa Shalom, Alina, Ve'ako Israel, Ve'ko Yoshe Tevel, Amen.
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 And friends, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to, for those of you who are leaving us now, hope you'll join us tomorrow. Sarah Waxman of At the Well will lead us as we move into the month of Tammuz. And on Friday, I'm very delighted that Aviva Chernik will be here. We will be marking Pride Month with a special edition of the Daily Sit on Friday, led by Viva Chernik, who's been holding our LGBTQ plus affinity sit this year, and is just a gifted mindfulness teacher, as well as, of course, an amazing musician. So looking forward to closing the week and sitting to Shabbat with Aviva on Friday. As always, we hope you can stay on. We're welcome just to continue to sit with Mira's beautiful guidance. You can turn off the sound on your computer, or you can join us for conversation. If you have a question you'd like to ask Mira, you can put it in the chat. As always, just preface it by writing question all in capital letters, and I'll keep an eye out, try to work your question into the conversation. And of course, as always, feel free as well just to share any reflections you have on your experience with the teaching and the sit today. Mira, thank you so much, as always. Just beautiful teaching and presence, and deeply appreciated by everybody, I know. Two things I guess I'd like to explore a little bit with you. I'm just going to name them so I remember them. One is, I'd love to talk a little bit more about prostration as a Jewish practice. So just want to remind myself of that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about non-dual Judaism, about Jewish mysticism, which holds basically that the divine, Moloch ha'artz kavodo, that the whole earth is full of the divine, and everything has a spark, at least a spark of the divine in it. In which case, when we have a story like Moshe and Korach, which looks like a showdown between, good and evil, that actually, from the Jewish mystical perspective, there is something of God in Korach. There's something, obviously of God in Moshe, and that we have these characters represent something in each of us. That we each have a Korach in us. And today you also lifted up that we also have a Leah in all of us too. The Leah that wants to be seen, that wants to be recognized, that wants to be loved. And just a side question there is, I don't want to conflate Leah with Korach, but it sounded like, in a sense, both Korach and Leah are represent in some way a sense of, feeling unseen, unvalued, unloved, and expressing it in very different ways. But Korach is expressing it through hostility and through confrontation. As far as we know, we don't get that with Leah, unless someone wants to write the midrash on that, with Leah saying, hey Yaakov. So I want to talk a little bit about, in meditation, hearing both of those voices. I invite you to talk a little bit about that, about hearing the voice of Moshe, or experiencing the presence of Moshe and the inclination to surrender in humility, and also experiencing, I'll call it the insecurity, not in a pejorative way, but in the way we all feel. We all feel insecure. Mm-hmm. We don't want to necessarily admit to it. We don't want people to see our insecurities. We want to protect them. But it represents insecurity in some way. And I invite you to, riff on anything I just said in terms of if I got that wrong. That's how I'm hearing it. How do we treat insecurities, and how do we meet it with a little bit of Moshe Anava?
I think actually really, I'll start with the end. How do we treat insecurities, and how do we kind of, reinvite or strengthen this point of Moshe within us? In a way, it's kind of the two tools that I suggested in our meditation, which is on the one hand, really clear, honest seeing. And it sounds easy, and it's not, and we all know it. If we have an unconscious, it's in part to protect ourselves from seeing things that hurt too much, or that we're afraid would hurt too much. And I know for myself that there are things that, from the outside, it's no big deal. But if it involves some sense of shame or not enoughness, or, we're going to be very protective. And I have been like this with things that, again, from the outside were not much, but that for me, it took a long time to be able to see and to meet because of the emotions it would kind of bring up to the surface. And I think the more we sit, the more we strengthen this capacity to hold in benevolence the difficult emotions, right? If Korach was able to deal with his envy, if he could name, oh, I have envy, and actually have tenderness for it. Because again, like, it's not just like, oh, we have our bright sides and we have our shadow sides, and envy is like not pretty. It's more than not pretty. It speaks to a deep yearning, as you said, to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel I'm deprived of something or I don't have enough, sometimes a human tendency, instead of working on my lack, on my sense of lack, and trying to kind of help myself, feel more full, then I'm going to project. Oh, I'm feeling like because of him, because he's taking what I have. I mean, look at the international relations, right? So clear seeing on the one hand, like the kind of fierceness of honesty,
Mm-hmm.
and which would be the Gvura, right? I'm talking in Sfirot archetypes, which many of you here know, right? But I just want to name it. We have two opposite sides, which are actually balancing each other, Chesed and Gvura. And Chesed is loving kindness, and Gvura is kind of, fierceness and boundary setting. So there is some kind of fierceness in meditation. We speak with a nice voice, and we invite, kindness, and it's true, and it's extremely important. And perhaps that this kindness comes together with the kind of courage it takes to, look clearly at, oh, I have envy. I mean, it's not so nice to see this in ourselves because it's not so pretty.
We don't like to see that in ourselves.
Yeah. And so can we stop trying to protect ourselves from seeing the not so pretty sides of us?
Right.
And then nurture a sense of enoughness.
Right. You're saying, what you're saying is making me think that, if you keep peeling the onion of that Korach, of not enoughness that leads to envy and, envy and jealousy and confrontation, which maybe does kind of belong in that Gevura side of judgment, right? Of comparative mind, right? Am I as good as, am I less than? That underneath that is this fundamental desire to be seen.
Mm.
And if we think about that as a manifestation of divine in us, of the divine wanting to be seen, if we think about ourselves as being made in the divine image, it's not like it doesn't even necessarily doesn't have to come from the ego to desire and to want to be seen. It could,
yeah.
Right? That this side that
that's a healthy
divine within us that says, I want to be seen. I want to be witnessed in some way. And that really changes the framing quite a bit.
Yeah. In nonviolent communication, the need to be seen is seen as one of the essential needs, just as sleep and water. And so I really want to emphasize that. And thank you for saying this. It's obviously, even if it sometimes translates into ego,
Right.
Expressions. I mean, it's a very natural, very, very natural human need. I just want to address a couple of questions because I think they're interesting. Sorry.
Yep.
So Nancy shared, I am challenged by thoughts of those who do not have enough, right? And then Harris is saying, I'm also challenged by those who have so much and keep wanting. So I want to talk about the first one, right? Those who do not have enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say two things about this. One is we're not talking here about material life. We're talking about the sense of self. And so I can feel that I'm enough and also be lacking food in my refrigerator if I am living in, conditions that are difficult. Okay. Also, many people I've spoken with, and I've seen that also myself, like in India, in Africa, in Colombia, and etc. The feeling of abundance is really not connected to what we actually have, and that's wonderful because there is some justice in the world. And as Harris wrote, and I'm seeing this a lot, there are people who have everything and more, and who are always, wanting more. And that speaks to a psychological need. And on the other side, there are people who are so, poor of almost, but if they have something to eat, they'll share it with you, and they have, so again, like we're not going into we're talking about our relationship to ourselves first and foremost, but there is also something about material needs and having and not having, and obviously, there are human tragedies of people actually lacking basic things, and that is something that needs to be remedied. And that's also why it's a true calling for social justice in the Jewish tradition to take care of that. That's another question. But
yeah, yes, that's all beautiful. And I'm thinking about Korach kind of keeping Moshe honest also, right? Even when he confronts Moshe, which is raising that question about, in that case, he's talking about power, why do you have more power? Why should you have more power? And I imagine that might trigger for Moshe that question about, I want to be conscious of my power and how I'm using my power and what's it for. Maybe it's a decent segue into the question just for the last 3 minutes of talking a little bit about the role of bowing and prostration in our tradition as a religious practice, which shows up mostly on Yamim Noraim, on the high holidays. For those who are familiar with the liturgy, the Great Aleinu is one time when we actually go all the way down on the ground. But even when we do Aleinu in general, at the end of services, we don't go all the way down, but we bend the knee and we bow, a deep bow, a deep bend, and of course at different points in the Amidah as well. So do you want to say a little bit about that? You said something about to distinguish ourselves from Islam, right? Which really, I guess what I would say is that, it's, first of all, I always find that such a powerful experience.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard people who have not done that to at least experiment with it, of a physical manifestation of surrender, of really acknowledging our place in the scheme of creation.
Oh, yeah.
Here to serve, that we're here not to conquer, we're here to serve as greater than ourselves. And that's how I experience it anyway. You?
I mean, exactly. It's for me, it's very relieving because it's total surrender. It's total surrender. It's surrendering my ego. It's giving myself to life. It's relieving in this way. It's not me. I don't even know how to explain it because it's very somatic. It's very somatic, and I really have to say I deeply regret that we don't do it more often than on the Yamim Noraim, because as you said, it's built in the prayer service. We just literally stopped, so that we could visually, distinguish ourselves from our Muslim neighbors. That's why we stopped. And sometimes I'm flirting with the idea of like on meditation retreats, kind of reintroducing it, to be honest, because there is something to somatic devices of surrender.
Sign me up. All right. We're at time. As always, Mira, thank you so much. And I want to thank you and thank Rachel for holding our today. Thanks. And each of you. By the way, for those of you who, I probably imagine most people know, but those of you who don't know, Rabbi Mira this year has been writing a weekly teaching and guided practice for the Parsha. And even though we're deep in the book of Numbers now, you're welcome to sign up.
Please come.
And you will have the whole year's worth of teachings going back through Breshit, Book of Genesis. So if you're interested, do check that out. And Rachel, if you don't mind sharing again the links.
And we have one live session a month as part of the IGS talk study. And then the next session is right now.
So you have 14 minutes to sign up and join for that. But as well, invite
Harris is writing something about this. I'm so glad, Harris.
Okay.
In 15 minutes.
Getting testimonials. Excellent. Okay, great. And there they are. Okay. So Mira is going to be doing a mini retreat for Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av this summer, and does a cycle of meditation and Musar as well. And anyway, lots of offerings. Thanks, Rachel, for sharing that. And hope to see everybody tomorrow to welcome the month of Tammuz with Sarah Waxman, everyone. Kodesh Tov.